The next section that we're going to talk about is I in the word admonish. An admonished mentor is insightful. We're asking you to be attentive to the whole person in the situation, the whole mentee. What is the picture that she's presenting? We talked about body language, we talked about facial features a little bit earlier, but we want you to really become skilled in being able to identify the whole picture that she wants you to see and understand, and even part of the picture that she really doesn't want you to see, or maybe is too vulnerable to share with you. There's just as much not being said when there is stuff being said. And those are the indicators that we want you to hone in on and be able to jot down. Many of you have probably heard of the skill called active listening. I don't know about your churches, but my church actually does a one-day workshop on active listening. I'm always giving my husband the Holy Spirit nudge. We should go to that. You should go to that. We all think that we listen really well, don't we? We all think that when we're in a conversation or even an argument that we're actually listening and hearing what the other person is saying. But reality is we're already forming our answers, we're already forming replies, we're already forming follow-up questions, we're already projecting where the conversation is going to go. So one key skill that we would like you to practice is slowing down and actively listening. And there are ways that you can practice active listening, and we're going to go into that here in just a second. This section, if you've never been trained or heard about active listening, this might be a section that you might want to jot down a few notes, or you're welcome to review the video again and go back over it a second time. Active listening happens when you're paying attention to the choice of words that the mentee uses. Are they positive or are they negative? Active listening means being patient. It may take some time for the mentee to get out the true picture of what she's trying to share. Active listening is concentrating on the words and the feelings behind the words that were chosen when something is explained. Active listening means being in the moment and being aware of when the Holy Spirit stirs within you, and being willing to gently lean into it, to what you sense the Holy Spirit might be stirring. Active listening really is not active. We call it active listening because it is something we have to focus on, but active listening requires more pulling back. It requires more pausing, resting, waiting, being comfortable in the quiet moments. Active listening is looking at the whole picture. What is happening in her life, what is happening in her heart, what is happening in her mind, what is happening in the situation. Active listening kind of looks at the broader picture. Active listening is aware of body language, word choices, things like that. If active listening is not something that you already know you can practice, I would encourage you to take a step back and evaluate some of your current relationships. Practice day to day when you're talking to your husband or when you're talking to your children. Practice what active listening actually means so that when you're in your mentor-mentee relationship, it comes a little bit easier for you. I will tell you that this is something I very much struggle with. I can probably fill space very easily. I love to empathize with people. I love to listen to their challenges and be a cheerleader, be an encourager. But I'm not always actively listening for what they're sharing. I'm listening for what I want to hear so I can respond to it. But I'm not pausing. I'm not really comfortable in the quiet moments. When I'm life coaching, that's one thing I'm always having to be aware of. Am I talking? That 75-25 rule, remember we talked about that ratio. They are sharing 75% of the time. We are sharing 25% of the time, which means we are actively listening 75% of the time, and they are actively listening 25% of the time. You can reverse that equation. So when we're actively listening, it's helpful for us to ask questions that will allow our mentee to open up more and share more and feel more comfortable. Open and closed questions look like this. Open questions are questions that start with who, what, when, where, and how. So you might ask something like, when was the last time you can remember feeling this way? Or, who in your world makes you feel the best? Closed questions are asking things like, why? Why did you do that? How many years did it take you to accomplish that? Closed questions respond with one-word answers. Okay, so when somebody's asking you to explain something or share something, or what would it look like if you were to do this? It allows room for an answer. Closed questions shut a conversation down. And it's not always negative. Sometimes we have to ask closed questions like, have you prayed about this with your husband? That's a fair question, right? And that's a yes or no. Yes, no. An open-ended question would look like, what does the time look like when you're praying with your husband about this? What do you sense your husband is leading towards in this situation? So we want to practice active listening, but we also want to practice open-ended questions. Open-ended questions make the atmosphere light, make the atmosphere feel welcome, and make her feel valuable. I'm going to read a question, and you're going to respond with whether it's an open-ended question or a closed-ended question, okay? So it'll be kind of like a little game. I wish I had prizes. I'd throw them out there to you guys. I know you're probably bored. You're getting through. We're almost done. It's going to be good. So here's our little quiz. Ready? Number 1, open or closed? What could you do that might help the situation? That's an open question. Open or closed? How would things change if you volunteer to lead that ministry? That's an open question, right? It gives room for her to share how things would change. Okay, open or closed? How many years have you led Bible study? That's a closed question. It's a quick answer with more factual information. Ready? Last one. Open or closed? What did you do after church today? That's more of a closed question because it's going to be a more factual answer where she simply shares with you, we went home and had lunch. Okay? So you kind of have an idea of what active listening is and what open and closed questions are. And those are ways that we as admonished mentors can be insightful. We're going to take just a second here, and I'm going to give you your next word for your 14-word phrase. You're going to want to write down the word this. Let's get ready to move on to the next letter.